Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Crafting Clarity in a Climate of Chaos, and thank you for that tongue twister, Tristan. We have Tristan Bishop on the line with us today. He's the Senior Principal Digital Strategist at Symantec Corporation, and more importantly, perhaps, a wonderful presenter, a great singer, and a good friend of mine who has some really, really interesting discussion, I think, around how things are changing in TechCom and the direction that the industry is going in. So we are delighted that he was able to present with us today. And Tristan, are you ready?
I am ready, Sarah. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I would expect you to answer back, but I know that you are collectively muted as a population. So we'll get a chance to maybe share some questions at the end, but I appreciate this opportunity to talk. What we're going to discuss today is the macro trends that are occurring in technology and across multiple industries that have a collective effect on technical documentation, or as I might refer to it as TechCom or information development throughout the talk. I work, as Sarah said, for Symantec, and I think many of you might be familiar with Symantec. We help people and companies protect their data, and just we protect, we store and protect about half the data in the world, actually. So pretty much underneath most of the networks and devices you use, we are there trying to defend you from the bad guys, and I'm proud to be part of that. Really love being a part of that team. A little bit about me. Some of you, many of you know me as Knowledge Bishop. That's my nickname. I'm into content. I like getting content from point A to point B. I have never understood why it's so hard sometimes to get content from point A to point B. I like people to get the content they need when they need it, and sort of driven by that. I've been doing that for about 15 years. And as social media has come more into fore, my job has changed, and now my main role actually is to design social media strategy for Symantec. I work in the Chief Technology Office and consult to the business units, to the Norton brand, to the enterprise, and to the partners as to how to use social media to accomplish corporate goals and improve customer satisfaction. But my history and my background is in technical writing. I was a doc manager for a long time and did consulting in that space. So it's sort of a natural progression into social media, and I'm going to share sort of the why about that today. So this is sort of from chaos to clarity, and as Sarah said, kind of a tongue twister. But I want to talk about three macro trends, like I said, that are shaping computing and technology and what that means for documentation. So we're going to discuss these three and the transitions they're bringing, how that affects info dev. That's short for information development. That's what we refer to our technical writers as at Symantec, information developers. And then I'm going to give you a path to progress, or sort of some action items and things to think about. So let's take a look at sort of what the changes are. This quote, "Nothing is as it was." I figured someone had said that, so I looked it up, but it seems to be something I've said. So let's take a look at the major macro trends that are kind of happening today. Many of you probably seen the movie The Perfect Storm, where the three storms sort of collide and create these 100-foot waves out in the ocean. We've got a similar thing developing right now in the past decade, where globalization of technology and internet traffic has become pretty huge and sort of shifted the thinking around crafting content. Content used to be very regional, and now the need for global content is a big deal. The trends, I think, in mobile adoption might even surprise many of you on the call. They surprised me as I was pulling some of the statistics together. And then, of course, there is the rapid social media growth. So I thought this picture of the three hurricanes descending on Florida, where I live, Florida, described it pretty well. So let me start with global. I think we're all familiar with the fact that business is changing. Certain jobs are moving to different markets. There's a 24-hour business day. You've probably all heard the term follow the sun. But I know as a daily web user, I don't think I was aware that only 13% of the web users are in North America. The growth in the last decade has been profound. The last 10 years have seen 1,000% growth in other markets, Latin America, the Middle East, and Africa, in terms of web usage. And in fact, today, Asia has 3 times more people using the web than all the North American countries combined. So I think the perspective that the internet is English language or mostly American, is just incorrect. A very 90s mindset, and has changed quite a bit. So that huge shift definitely impacts the kind of content we need to create. I know when I'm at certain conferences or events, I find people that say, well, my product is just in English, and we don't have any plans to localize or translate. And maybe that is a fact, but more and more businesses are looking for market share, and the external and global markets are the place they find it, and suddenly there's a requirement on the doc team, and so being ready for that is a big deal. There are folks that think that maybe this is not a trend that's going to continue. I thought this quote from Kofi Annan was pretty relevant. Globalization is happening. It's such a reality. He said it's like the law of gravity. So huge shift. The second shift I find is actually even more profound. I'm stunned by the statistics as to the adjustment between standalone telephone usage and mobile adoption. I still remember looking for payphones. I used to sing in a rock band in my early 20s, and we used to drive around in a mobile home, and I had a little beeper. And when the manager or somebody needed to reach us, they would page us, and we would pull the mobile home off the road and try to find a payphone so I could call the guy back. And that wasn't that long ago. That's probably 1993. So this graph starts just a few years after that in 2000. About a decade ago, 1 in every 10 people in the world had a mobile device. And what this graph shows is not just the growth in mobile devices or subscriptions, but the saturation between people, the percentage of people that own a phone. So you can see in just 10 years, we went from 10% of people owning a mobile phone to 77% of people owning a mobile phone. A huge shift in the way the world operates. So communication went from being based on the location where you had to be somewhere to say something to just going with you wherever you are. And 90% of the world's population now has access to a mobile network. 77% of the people in the world now have a mobile device. That's across all the countries, all the developing countries, and that's a massive shift in the way the world works. Not 100% sure TechCom has caught up to that shift yet. Many industries and job functions are still scrambling to respond to that shift. In fact, while most industries and functions are turning their sights toward mobile, I think TechCom is a space that still very much thinks of their documentation in terms of a desktop computing environment, or even still a physical disk or physical print manual. But according to research from a number of analysts, this one's from Morgan Stanley, it will only be 2 more years till the mobile internet overtakes the desktop internet. There'll be more page views on smartphones and tablets than there are on laptops and desktops. There will be more people using mobile endpoints than will be using traditional computing. And unit sales, more people will be buying mobile PCs or mobile smartphones, tablets, than there will be buying laptops and desktops. So we really are just a couple years away. If you look at this graph, the yellow line is the rise in mobile internet users, and you can see the trajectory there relative to the green line, which is desktop internet usage. So as I ponder technical writing, the vast majority of customers I've talked to and people I've worked with have optimized their technical writing paradigm for desktop computing. Very few teams I know are delivering their content to mobile endpoints or optimizing their content that way. And yet the population of people using mobile has gone from 10% to 77% in the last decade, and mobile traffic is going to overtake PC traffic in 2 years. So what we see is an opportunity to remain relevant, or really just to be blown out of the water. There's definitely some agreement among thought leaders in the industry. I was searching for great quotes. I found the exact same quote from multiple people. I just put 3 of them here. Mobile is the future. I'm hearing it from Google, Facebook, Morgan Stanley. So many people are using that as a tagline in their presentation. It's really already here. And here's why it matters to technical writing. It isn't just that people get on the phone and make a phone call. It's becoming less and less relevant what people do with the voice-based part of a phone. It really is a portable computing device, the whole smartphone thing. This is a graph of from Coder Research predicting the mobile data traffic in the next 5 years. That's the amount of content shared over these mobile endpoints, downloaded, uploaded, viewed. And this is where your content comes in. People are increasingly going to be looking for data, looking for content on their mobile endpoints. And as technical writers, we need to optimize our delivery to be able to be viewed successfully on the variety of tablets and smartphones that are out there, on the Androids and the iPhones and the iPads and the Evos and all sorts of things. So the Zooms. So that's the second trend. The second trend is mobile. So the first one is global. Second one is the mobile rise. And the third one is the one I work in every day, and that's social media. And this transition is almost as profound of an adjustment in terms of culture as the mobile transition. If you look at some of these numbers, this URL there at the bottom of this slide, if you'll get a chance to get a copy of these, you can go there yourself. You'll see this counter update in real time, sort of like the Times Square national debt calculator or one of those other countdowns till Christmas. It's actually moving. You can see the amount of people that are contributing content via social channels or subscribing to social channels. Some of this data is staggering. By tomorrow night, another 1 million Facebook users, more than there were today. And the one I think really is relevant for us is there'll be 1 billion pieces of content shared on Facebook today. Now, that's not all the kind of content we create. Some of it is, silly stuff, and will you, buy my sheep on Farmville? But there is an increasing percentage of instructional content being moved from one user to another on Facebook, and a significant and growing percentage of that 1 billion pieces of daily content sharing is how-to content, instructional content, topics. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Over 250,000 people will join Twitter in the next 24 hours. Twitter is gaining share for business thought leadership and data exchange. 90 million tweets just today. Now, they're not all about what kind of sandwich people had. There's an increasing amount, and I'm going to show you some statistics. Increasing amount of Twitter activity is devoted to sharing URLs to relevant content that helps people do their job. So we're going to talk about why social media and content sharing are aligning and what that means for TechCom. But again, I think at this point it might be easier to see that these three adjustments, as they come together, have an effect on TechCom. There are some, Eric Qualman is an author who state that social media is one of the largest shifts we've ever seen. He claims it's the biggest adjustment for the modern worker since the Industrial Revolution. I think the mobile adjustment is just as big, but they are both massive if you consider how fast the change is. I think just a year or two ago when I go to a conference and speak to people, I'd find a lot of people saying, well, I don't really use that or I don't do that. That's really changed just in the last 18 to 24 months. You notice 2 years ago, if you look at this demographic adjustment in the last 2 years, sort of the younger baby boomers, 1 in 5 was active on social networks. That's up to 50% as of a year. So in the period from late December in 2008 to about a year ago today, there was a huge curve, and I'm waiting for Pew to release new data. I'm certain it'll be higher, but you are finding that the future workforce, if you look at the millennials, the people that will be entering the workforce or are already there, almost all of them use social media, and increasing numbers of social activity across every demographic. My mother is online. Many people have their grandparents online. My children's grandparents go onto Facebook to exchange conversations with my wife and to look at the pictures of the grandchildren. And every demographic is becoming increasingly comfortable with interacting in this way. And that has an effect for how they share content and share our data. Here's another statistic. I know we think of the web, I've often thought of the web as a collection of branded sites, and then you go and you search for what you want and you get it and you read it. But if you look at the orange line here, the orange line is social networking web activity. The blue line is search engine activity. So the blue line is Google and Bing and Yahoo and a combination of searches. And the orange line is Facebook and Twitter and all the interactions, LinkedIn. And you can see it was over a year ago that social surpassed search as the primary internet activity. So social media activity is now the major thing that happens on the internet, more important than search, carrying more share. These two graphics show the increase the past 12 quarters or so in searches specifically within Twitter content or within Facebook content. So this is the traffic. So you log into Twitter and you search within Twitter. This is the increase in traffic on that curve on the bottom there. And Facebook has a similar curve. People are now searching these networks for content. And my question to technical writing is your content present there? Is it represented there? Has it been not stored on Twitter, but has it been mentioned on Twitter so that when someone searches Twitter, they might find a link to it? It's sort of another way that content is being shared, and it is gaining relevance. And we're going to talk more about that. So just wanted to sort of present that as an overview. And with these changes in mind, with the rapid growth of internet usage outside North America, with the rise of mobile adoption from 10% to 77% in one decade, and with a billion pieces of content going back and forth on Facebook every day, can technical writing teams really function as though it's business as usual? And if, in fact, it is possible to function that way, how much longer will it be possible? I know Sarah and I were talking right before the presentation about a recent talk she'd given about showing business value and remaining relevant. And I believe that these three storms are conspiring to create conditions that give us a great opportunity as a business function and as an industry, but also present a challenge if we choose to remain static. So let's talk about how these three changes specifically impact the TechCom profession or the information development profession. I think we are all familiar with the fall of static content. Very few of us, I know there are some, but very few still receive a hard copy newspaper every day. And it is a precious few that have a folding map in the glove compartment. I know. I can't recall the last time I had to struggle with refolding a map. We have a GPS in the Honda dashboard, and I don't even use that anymore. Now I use the iPhone. It's more accurate. They drop yellow pages on my doorstep twice a year. I ask them, please don't do this. I haven't opened one in 10 years, and they keep dropping them. But this is not the way people find addresses anymore. And yet, for some reason, even though people are using GPS and not maps, and even though they're going to websites for news, and even though they're looking up their phone numbers online, for some reason we're still making product manuals. And so as dynamic content has faded away from most forms of usage and been replaced with dynamic up-to-the-minute content, as static content has fallen out of favor, for some reason technical writing still has a love and loyalty to the sort of static release-driven data set that we call the manual. But the customers are going to leave that behind, even though we may continue to love it. So what's happened? Well, as we know, the web kind of brought real-time content to the fingertips of the user. You can get dynamic maps now. They're updated. You can, even on Google, you can see what the traffic is flowing between your destination and your location, current location. You can go in and see which roads are blocked and which are unblocked and get that real-time access. Why would you pull out a paper map when you could know not only have this road changed, is there construction, is there traffic? People want that up-to-the-minute data. Addresses, are dynamic now. What's the point of pulling out the yellow pages or getting having your own physical hard copy address book? Statistics show people move once every 5 years. Within 5 years, your whole address book is out of date. Well, now you keep a dynamic address book, whether it's something called Plaxo or you just look someone up in Google, and you stay current. The news, of course, 24-hour news cycle, always dynamic. No longer the need to get it into the afternoon paper just in time. News is up to the minute. In fact, I find that I get more relevant up-to-the-minute news on Twitter than I do on CNN. I have heard it said by journalists I know that the major news sources, like the AP, they hunt Twitter for breaking stories, and then they write them up. But for some reason, very few product teams deliver their documentation in a dynamic way, where the real-time issues in the field, new bugs, hot issues, call generators for the tech support team, result in updated doc content being pushed to the web in real time. For whatever reason, our profession hasn't followed that model, and I believe the customers will increasingly want that from the TechCom profession. I know we did a survey of several hundred of our customers a few years ago, and we found that they were 500 times more likely when they needed something just to search Google than they were to look in our docs. They didn't open our docs. They didn't look at the index. They didn't scan the TOC. They didn't even search the PDFs. They just searched Google, and they took what they found. And that was the behavior change 4 years ago. It increases to change. So we adjusted. We took our PDFs at that time, split them up into web topics, applied metadata, put them up there for Google indexing, and started to see up to a million. We got up to 4 million hits a month on that content. So that was a huge plan. I know I talked about that last year when I spoke for Scriptorium, but even more changes happening now. So why? What's the result of the dynamic content era on data and on TechCom? Here's a statistic that might be interesting. Up to 2002, from the dawn of time, like cave paintings and parchment scrolls, until 2002, the human race had created 5 exabytes of data that was stored online. So everything that had been scanned from all our old documents and everything. Here we are, 9 years later, we're creating 5 exabytes every 48 hours. So the history of data scanned and archived is now, we now create that every 2 days. So the content that maybe one product team puts up on the web has a smaller and smaller share of the overall content that's out there. It becomes increasingly difficult with the data increasing this much, this quickly, for Google to index it all, for the search results to provide the proper context to the user, for them to find your content. Now, sure, they could come to your website, but customers increasingly are not doing that. They're wanting the data brought to them. So what do we do? How, as a profession, do we cope with this adjustment? There are 3 particular things that we can do, and we're going to look at them now. One of them is social sharing, and that's sort of the crux of what I've been working on lately, and that is to promote information development content that's topical, relevant, timely, really important stuff directly to targeted customers through social networks. The second one is to take a look at social search. That's a function that Google's kind of put out there. It's in beta, and I'll show you how that looks. And then third is the rise of social support. So let's look at social sharing. Remember when I mentioned the 1 billion pieces of Facebook content that people are passing around? I think all of you, or most of you, are probably on Facebook, and you probably see some of the first couple of types. This data was compiled by Dan Zarella. He is a quote-unquote social media scientist, and he studied tens of thousands of posts and then categorized and analyzed them. And what we find is that, of course, the main thing people are sharing on LinkedIn and Twitter and blogs and Facebook especially is news. So late-breaking stuff, RIP Liz Taylor, here's a link to a tribute of her life, or there's an issue in Egypt that's happening, and these are the kind of links that are getting shared, URLs that are being passed. Obviously a lot of humor, silly videos, and check this out, this made me laugh till milk came out of my nose, that kind of thing. That's the second category. Certainly opinions, blog posts, arguments, but it's the fourth category that affects us. And that is 1/3 of the 1 billion pieces of content that are shared on Facebook and all the other social networks. A full third have some form of how-to or instructional content in them. So 1 out of every 3 pieces of data that's being moved around has instructional content. Now, that's not all technical writing content. Some of it is how to make cucumber sandwiches or something like that, a Rachel Ray post. But there is a huge percentage, and it's growing, of how-to content that's being moved around. And if you look closely on Twitter in certain places, you'll see a tremendous amount of instructional content moving through these social networks, gaining relevance, gaining traction based on the value it brings to the user set. The 3 different colors in this deck talks about whether or not the user is a high-frequency share. So I want to specifically focus on the red line under how-to and instructional. That's a high-frequency one-to-many share. What that is that's a popular user on social media that's got a lot of followers, a lot of respect, and they are sharing almost 40% of what they're sharing is instructional content. So you've got really validated curators in certain areas that are pushing content that people want to see. So why does that matter? Let's look at the next part. Google and the other search engines have always ranked websites based on a mystery of key factors, including, keywords that match and metadata, but there is a new component to these algorithms, and that is social influence. I want to say 8 months ago, Google officially confirmed that the number of times a page is mentioned in a blog, shared on Facebook, liked on Facebook, or retweeted on Twitter, that is counted profoundly into the rank result of the web page. So for example, if I write a blog post and Sarah writes a blog post, and I don't tweet my blog post, I just put it out there, and say our posts are essentially identical. They've got the same keywords, same metadata, everything's the same, but Sarah tweets out her post tweeted by a bunch of users. Her page is going to come up much, much higher than mine when someone does a Google search on that topic. Google is looking for Twitter and Facebook sharing and traffic and using it to say, hey, this content's been validated. It's not junk content that's been crafted by, an SEO content farm. The community has proven that this content has value. They've shared it back and forth. They've validated that it's relevant, it's useful, it's timely. I'm going to serve it up first. I'm going to serve it up higher. I believe it's more likely to be useful. So what does that mean for technical writing? All of a sudden, we're writing this content, and customers are buried in data, another 5 exabytes every 48 hours. They're all over the place, and they're out there on their mobile phone, and they need an answer, and they're going to search. Well, guess what? If our content hasn't been shared and distributed and socialized among social channels, it's not showing up in the search results. And we're going to continue to lose relevance to user-generated content or folks that understand how this new paradigm has shifted. So the key action point, and I'm going to talk about that soon, is that TechCom needs to enter the social conversation and start distributing content to retain their spot. So it's interesting. And in fact, the higher the influence of the social user that's tweeting out the content, the more relevance it gets in the search result. So let me show you another way that is very likely to affect how people find your content in the future. And this is the social graph. What this is in beta. This is called Google Social Search. And to prototype it, I took my Google account, I logged into Gmail, and then I linked it up to my LinkedIn profile, to my Facebook account, and to my Twitter account. Now, take a deep breath. I know a lot of you don't want to do that. That means you're sharing your personal information across multiple organizations. I can understand that as technical people, that might not be our preference. I did it because I needed to understand how it worked, and because users are increasingly choosing convenience over privacy in a stunning sort of trend. Dell, for example, has a Facebook account where they offer tech support, and they have 523,000 people that have chosen to opt in. So they basically 500,000, 500,000 people have given Dell access to their Facebook content in order to have the convenience of getting their tech support within their Facebook login. So it's just another data point around the trends that people want convenience, they want to be known, and while there is always going to be a subset who prefer privacy, the majority are just preferring convenience. So let's look. We're here, and we're looking at Google, and we go in, and maybe we search on antivirus support. You can see the first 3 links are sponsored, they're ads, they're purchased, and they're paid. Well, as a user, I don't want to get the search result of the people that paid the most for mine. I want the best result. And maybe down below, these are sites that have the best search engine optimization or meta tagging. But as the user, what I'm looking for is the highest quality answer. So what Google has put in place is, if you look down at the bottom left, if you do a search in the top search bar and then click social, it will prune your result set to only those web pages or results that have been liked or shared by your social network. So what we're seeing now is a subset of all antivirus support web pages that have been shared by my contacts, Tristan's contacts. So Scott Nesbitt is the first one. He's one of the DMN guys in the TechCom space, and he had shared a review on this particular content. So everybody listed here, you see Shar James Tanny. She is a longtime tech writing expert, and maybe even on the call. And this is a piece of content that she had shared at some point. So when I pruned my result set to my social graph, what I got was content that people I already know and respect and trust had already found valuable. So I went from the billions of pieces of content that just exist out there to a pruned data set based on my relationships. That's the future. That's another reason why our content has to be modular, has to be social and shared among respected subpopulations, so that when your product experts go out there on the web and they want to find something, or your consultants or one of your customers, there will be a way for them to subset and get down to that. It's a paradigm shift for sure. And the last thing I talked about, social search, social sharing, and let's look at social support. Companies are increasingly moving toward new models for customer service and tech support. We're going to see here a graphic from the Technology Services Industry Association, and this is an organization very much like the STC, except it's for tech support professionals. So just like the tech writing community has the STC, the tech support community has the TSIA. And what they've been doing is for the last 4 or 5 years, they've been studying the percentage of customer interactions based on channel. And you can see that 5 years ago, 60% of these interactions were voice-based. And that's the blue line. You can see that these are going down in giving way to favor of text-based channels. So the top 5 support channels are text-based channels. What we're finding out is that tech writing content can solve a lot of the incidents in the top 5 channels. So there is a need to push content back to customers to solve problems. It's a lot less expensive for companies to solve issues this way. So you can push a URL to a tech writing procedure in an email. You can push that URL in web chat. You can make that topic available for self-service by making it search engine optimized. You can push it through a community forum by saying, here's your answer. Or you can actually tweet the URL out or push it via Facebook or through social channels. So what we're finding is that overall tech support is now increasingly text-based, much less based on phone calls, and that the content we've been creating all this time actually can resolve a lot of these interactions. We just have to adjust it. We have to move our content from the delivery mechanisms that it's lived in, from the buckets it's been in, and refactor it so that it can be easily moved through these channels. Then with a combination of optimizing it for social search, sharing it across social channels, and moving it through these social support channels, that content can still have a linchpin role in the future of customer and brand interactions. So what do we do? Say you're a doc manager today or a tech writer today, and you've just gotten all this crazy amount of information from me on a webinar. What do you do first? Well, it's just time to take a close look at how you're making your content, what you're doing with it. I know that for me and for many of us, there is a personal pride in the craft of building a book. Very much like a cobbler who makes fine shoes wouldn't want to just suddenly go to work in a Nike factory. There is an emotional cost to letting go of the craftsmanship aspect. And what I had to do is I dealt with the reality of the statistics, is had to say, okay, I love building a book. I get a lot of pride out of crafting a book. But that's no longer the way that the technical writing industry is going. I'm going to have to write a blog and fulfill my creative desire to craft content through those methods. My technical writing work is going to have to adjust and become more efficient and give way to sort of the modern needs of the profession. So the content's got to become modular. It's got to be standardized for easier translation. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. But you know, the English, if that's your source language, has to be consistent from topic to topic to make efficiencies for translation. So quality control tools are a big deal. Writers generally don't love having a machine editing their text. It can feel very intrusive and definitely cut down on our ability to express things poetically. But if the issue is about delivering to multiple locales quickly in real time, you know, we're in 40 countries at my company. We've got to get a topic out there and get it translated and distributed quickly. It's not about me saying it the way I feel like saying it. It is about getting it to the customer. So I had to retrain my mind to going, how can I please as many customers as possible and solve their problems as fast as I can at a reasonable cost point? No longer is it about me crafting. And so that was a mindset shift for me and for many people where I work. There are machine translation tools. Obviously, you've probably seen Google Translate. There are professional-grade machine translation tools. They don't get it right 100%. They don't perfect it. I think the highest I've seen is like 73% of a content set accurately done by the computer. The remainder, of course, has to be done by a human being. That's fine. There are vendors for that. But we're finding that there are also opportunities for crowdsourcing and community collaboration where it comes to translation. I heard an anecdote. I don't know if it's the case that Facebook put their Spanish version up for translation to the crowd, and it was done in a day or two for free. So we have explored at where I work leveraging some of our customers in other locales to help us translate our content, and in exchange for their name on a leaderboard and a T-shirt and just acknowledgement, a lot of people are quite happy to get that done. So it's a very interesting model that companies are looking for. We prepare for global delivery where I work in a number of ways. Some of this will be very familiar to many of you. We use XML as our source. Then we run a controlled language path over our English source to make sure that we're following all of our own rules so that it's easily translatable. And then there's sort of a systematic workflow that takes the English language chunks through a globalization system. We run machine translation, then route it back to human beings who fix up the translation, and then the translated XML gets stored alongside the English XML in a database. So again, it's a topical kind of modular delivery with a focus on global content. That's sort of just how we've handled it where I work. How would you go about preparing for mobile delivery? I think this is a big shift for people. Everybody's heard about topic-based publishing, but up to now our focus for topic-based publishing was the web, was the desktop web. I think more and more this year it's becoming obvious that the end game is the mobile web. And so the topics have to even be shorter. They have to be simpler, more to the point, more modular. And it's going to require content strategy planning and deeper thinking around the data flow from one procedure to another. Certainly search engine optimization for each granular node, so that if you're searching in Safari on an iPhone or looking in a browser on your mobile endpoint, you can get right to the piece of content you need exactly. And it's actually extended past our traditional TechCom professional expertise, and that Gartner has come out and said in their most recent report on what has to be done, point blank, content delivery has to be optimized for fewer clicks and smaller screens. So it's sort of a call to action for all people who are creating content for the future. We're taking some steps around this where I'm working too. We've just recently aligned our user-centered design teams, the people that typically do the human factors engineering and the user testing and the usability, and we're partnering them up right with information development, and we are working on an integrated content strategy for mobile. So we're creating like a mobile content delivery UI and looking at refactoring content. We're also prototyping some XSL extracts for some of the mobile endpoints with an eye to being able to quickly redeploy. So right now, maybe for those of you who are in XML publishing, maybe you're deploying a form of help and a form of PDF and maybe one or two other extracts. We're finding that as much as we want to bring our extract set down to a small amount, every time a new mobile endpoint catches fire in the marketplace, we're going to have to be ready to put content out for that device. So we've got to build our XSL in such a way that we can quickly tweak it. So that's what we're looking at. As far as social delivery, ways that a TechCom team can start to make a dent is to consider actually putting up a social media presence. There are many of my partner and competitor companies have websites on Twitter and on Facebook where they share their content. There's, HP Docs, and then those social media accounts can begin to follow customers, can get customers to like them, and build relationships to prepare for social search, such that when there is a hot topic, they push it out, they might get it retweeted or forwarded or shared, start to engage. Pushing key topics out onto the social web, that's already relevant. I'm going to show you what we're doing there. And then I don't really go too deeply into this in this presentation. You're probably familiar with URL shortening tools. They allow you to share content on a medium like Twitter where you only have 140 characters. But sometime after the presentation, take a look at what happens when you take a bit.ly URL and put a plus sign at the end of it. It's a beautiful thing. bit.ly is a tool that allows you to shorten the link. And if you put a plus sign at the end and put it in your browser bar, what you get is the analytic profile of who's viewed it, what countries they were in. And that's a great thing for TechCom to know, who's reading the content, who's sharing the content. So what we're doing here is we started with one or two products. Our endpoint protection team went out and made a Twitter account. They made a Facebook page, And then they called tech support and they said, what are the hot issues? What are the call generating issues? Is there content we can be promoting that we think will deflect calls? And we've been doing some very, very tightly measured pilots around this, and we're seeing great results. When we focus on a particular product and customer set and look at what their call drivers are, promote relevant content around that, and then study the results, we are seeing that call volumes do fall in those areas based on the content that's getting shared and pushed out. So definitely a wave of the future is to be actively promoting content as a way to deflect incoming telephone calls. So these storms are huge, and they are going to converge. People are increasingly going to be all over the world on a mobile device, on a social network, trying to find your content. That is absolutely the wave of the future. They're going to want to open up their smartphone in their language, search for your content, and find it right away. And I thought a telling convergence point was a statistic I saw that people that are already using a social network, Facebook in specific, on their endpoint, their mobile, are twice as active there than the people that use Facebook on a desktop. So, for example, if you have 10 people using Facebook on their computer at home and 10 people using it on the mobile phone, the 10 that are on the mobile phone are doing twice as much. They're using it twice as often. So that's an interesting stat. And then you can see here that the mobile usage of even Facebook itself is exponentially growing. So what we have is 3 massive shifts, all of which touch what we do for a living and reshape kind of the way we'll be working in 5 years. And more so than any time since I've been in the profession, sort of the fundamental underpinnings of what we do have to be rethought. So in order to succeed, we've got to get ourselves ready. It could be that in your day-to-day work, nothing has changed. You're still making a PDF and you know, a WebWorks help file or a RoboHelp file or something and putting it out there on your CD-ROM that ships with your product twice a year. Could be that your processes today are exactly the same. That will not hold. It's going to change. It's a question of will you be ready when it does. So my recommendation to everybody I talk to in TechCom is get aware, study the trends, get active on social channels, explore, look and see how they work, look at hashtags on Twitter, figure out how they work, look at Facebook Open Graph, figure out what it is, what it does, what it will mean to you. Rethink your strategy around content, creativity, and deployment. Rethink your day-to-day processes and get yourself ready and build a hurricane-resistant content delivery team. This picture is of one of these newfangled houses that apparently is structured exactly to withstand a hurricane, and it definitely looks nice. So I want to thank you for your time. I think we have about 15 minutes left for questions, and Sarah is going to collect those questions and read them to me, and I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Tristan. So if you do have questions for our audience, if you could drop those into the questions tab that you see in the GoToWebinar control panel, we will pick those up there and feed them back over to Tristan. We do have a few minutes for that. I wanted to start by asking you about the issue of commoditization of technical writing. What are your thoughts on that? That's one of those things I hear a lot of fear around that issue.
I'm sorry, so will you restate that? What are my thoughts around?
The prospect of commoditization of technical writing or technical writers.
I believe very strongly that that is a legitimate concern, that if technical writing persists in its current procedures, its current way of doing business, it will be commoditized and move to the lowest bidder. I believe that if technical writing teams allow that to happen, they have missed the warnings. I think there's an incredible opportunity. If you look at social tech support, if you look at tech support moving to 50% text and only 50% voice, there's an incredible opportunity for tech writers to redeploy their skills and start optimizing their content around tech support. So for example, we've got, I don't know, 20 or 30,000 topics that we pulled out of our product manuals. We now deliver all of those through the tech support knowledge base. So the tech support engineers, when they receive a phone call, the first thing they do is they search the knowledge base, they search our content, and they use our content to solve the cases. In addition, customers use the content that the tech writers create here at Symantec to solve their own cases on self-service support. So tech writing could be commoditized if it just continues to be about maybe the legal requirement of shipping a manual. if it's just something they're going to ship and no one's going to read it. But if tech writers get engaged with tech support and start partnering up with them, if they get active on social channels and start looking for ways to demonstrate value and just start using the fact that their writing skills are still very valuable. The need for quality writers has not gone away. It's increased. But the function of technical writing the way we've experienced in the last 20 years is definitely a sunset function. So that's not to say that tech writing is going to disappear, but it needs to adapt or it will.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about social media websites on corporate networks. My company blocks all social media websites on our internal network. What can I do to change their mind on the importance of social media?
That is a really tough question. I've been looking at some statistics lately that show that employee engagement and happiness is very tied to whether or not a company allows social engagement from behind the firewall. If a company doesn't understand the need to engage socially at a PR level or a marketing level, or to leverage their own employees as brand ambassadors, it will be tough to convince them that technical writing is the place to start. So what can you do to show them the importance of social media? You can get a copy of The Now Revolution by Amber Naslund, read it, and then pass it along to as many people as you can. You can show them Eric Qualman's work, maybe Brian Solis's work, but you should also be, I don't know who asked the question. Hopefully this isn't too incendiary, but you want to keep your options open professionally, because that is an indicator of a company that will not be around forever.
And somebody helpfully pointed out that you should show them this presentation.
Well, you could certainly do that, but because there's data in here that goes well beyond TechCom. It is my belief, and my new job is social media strategy. If a company will not embrace social media, they're going to be out of business. It's a matter of time. It's going to be too late. So you need to be looking for your career prospects long term. It's too big of a groundswell shift to ignore, and it's going to become a competitive advantage for the brands that get there first. The brands that get to social media customer service are going to have an advantage over brands that try to get there 3 years later. It's a mindset shift. If they won't even let you use it while you're at work, you know, what can you do? I would get yourself a personal iPhone or Droid and explore it that way. Off the corporate network, of course.
Of course. Do you, off the top of your head, have a source for the 5 exabytes in 48 hours statistic? You know where that came from?
I'm not sure if I put the source on the slide. It's from Eric Schmidt. He's a former CEO of Google. He put it in a lot of his talks. Let me see if I put that. I might have left the link off there. No, there it is. It's there. It's the Read Write Web article called The Coming Data Explosion.
My eyes are not that good.
Yeah. I put all the links on here so when it comes out. Let me make it bigger for anybody who wants to see it, and then I'll make it small again. But I put the sources for all these stats in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. There's a question here about other automated quality control tools, and you covered some of this on your global delivery slide, but can you talk a little bit about what's available in that space?
You know, I'm not widely studied on the competitors for the tools that we use. We use the Acrolinx IQ suite, and it enforces some rules on our English language content. We've chosen a few very basic rules. You know, we don't use a lot of gerunds, harder to translate. We keep our sentence length to 25 words, makes it easier for the machine translation. I know that there are competitors to the Acrolinx product. I know that SDL has a robust product suite that handles the XML authoring stack all the way from the content creation through the quality control through the translation. So that's one of the primary competitors there, but I'm sure there are probably people on the call who might be even chatting in right now, Sarah, that know those tools better. My daily work this past year has been evangelizing the vision of what's possible with social media sort of company-wide beyond the TechCom space. So I have been less active in the TechCom tool space than I used to be.
There's a question here about iPad, tablet devices, and the ratio of, let's say, adoption of those versus smartphones. And Is there a trend towards the tablet or not? Have you seen anything on that?
There is a huge amount of tablet adoption. The growth curve is very high, but the price point is such that it will be a long time before that takes over. I think tablet, I mean, it's my hunch that tablet sales are going to do more damage to laptop sales than they are to smartphone sales. People are going to replace their laptops with tablets until a tablet can make a phone call. Right? Because I want an iPad, I need to go get one, but I'm not giving up my iPhone for anything. Not until I can make a phone call from my iPad, which will look a little weird. That's kind of big to hold up to your ear. But yes, tablet growth is definitely huge, but the price point is such. You can get a decent smartphone for $100 through some of the carriers now. The tablets are 4 or 5 times that much. So.
Okay, let's see. A couple other interesting questions here. Any tips on crowdsourcing? Experience, successes, tips for a crowdsourcing project?
So what we did is we went to a very controlled group of existing customers and put up a forum using some Drupal tools and said, hey, we'd like to translate this content from point A to point B. Are you interested in participating? Would you like to help? It wasn't put out there randomly to strangers. It was sort of a controlled beta, and we had great results. So having a relationship was a good starting point. There are a number of websites, I'm sorry they're not coming to mind immediately, where people actually are bidding on products and services. Let me see if I can just check my notes. Yeah, and
Elance.
Elance, that's the one I was looking for. So that might be a great place for people to look, is to go to Elance and take a look. Another one is 99 Designs. 99 Designs. It's a graphic design crowdsource firm where you just go in there and you tell them what you need, and then different people bid on it. There's a site called Fiverr.com. These are people that will do odds and ends and work for you for $5. You might need this or that done, and so there's all sorts of ways that people are using the internet to offer their services. There are many people who think that in the future there will not be employers, that we'll all be independent contractors choosing how much we do or don't work and taking jobs here and there. I know that at Disney, right now, already today, I'm based in Orlando, so I know a lot of people that work at Disney. They have a model like this for their work shifts, for their employees. So shifts come up, and they go in and claim them or don't claim them using a website, or they trade them. Like, I'm working Thursday from 2 to 5 at Epcot, but I really want to work Friday at Hollywood Studios. Is there anyone who will trade that? And so they're kind of using the web to share their shifts. And there's all sorts of interaction and collaboration going on this way. But Elance is definitely the place I would probably start looking.
Another question here related to the social media and more of the, I think, the crowdsource. Well, I'll just read the question. Any comments on translating social media in real time?
So that's a trick, and I know we've been working on a pilot internally in our CTO org around real-time translation of chat. So what we're trying to do is be able to have a tech support engineer in one language do a chat session with a customer in a different language and have a pass-through. I have heard rumors of Twitter translation. The potential for fiasco is pretty big there for misquoting, and I mean, that could really go wild. If you think of some of the issues you've had maybe with an iPhone autocorrect, I know I've had some of those where the context changes based on a single character. There's definitely some work going on. Some of you are familiar with augmented reality. I saw an app debuted a month or two ago that claims to translate street signs for you as you hold up your phone to it. So I tried it. It's still an alpha, and it doesn't quite do it. But you hold up your camera to the street sign, and you pick your point A and point B language, and then it re-renders the sign and overwrites your image on your camera screen in the same font with the other language. It's a very weird sort of thing. There are definitely a number of startups and firms looking to try to make real-time translation happen. If you're interested in exploring that, definitely look at Google Translate, look at Babelfish, get out there and take a look at some of the pilots that they have going.
Yeah, and I would add to that my Twitterific app has a translate this tweet button. So if I have a tweet that comes in a language that I don't understand, I can just tap translate this tweet, and it will magically translate. Now, the translation quality is iffy, but I do generally get the point. I wouldn't use it for contracts or anything like that, but it does get the point across.
So along the lines of the question of the commoditization of the tech writing profession, the commoditization of the localization profession is definitely an issue too. As machines increasingly gain skill, it becomes more and more difficult to justify huge human capital expenses in that space. And you've got to start repurposing your skills into something relevant.
Okay. Well, I believe we have answered all the questions. Whoops, there comes another one.
Well, I see something from Jack, but I can't quite read it on my screen.
There are a number of comments from Jack. I picked off the questions. There are some other things going on. I believe you have an invitation to do some speaking at LavaCon. That was in the back channel.
Okay.
So, but a comment here: translating tweets should really start and end with gisting. Getting the gist of it, which I would definitely agree with. That came from Bill. So I want to thank you for coming.
Sure.
And for sharing with the audience. It looks like everybody had a good time, and thank you to our audience. We will get the recording up within usually about 48 hours, sometimes faster. It just kind of depends on how clean the audio is, and I can assure you that Tristan's audio is cleaner than mine, so good for him. Were there any kind of last thoughts you wanted to leave people with?
Well, other than the job skill that we all brought to the table to begin with, was not our mastery of Word or FrameMaker or templates or WebWorks or anything, but our ability to clarify. And what makes us good at what we do is that we can take gobbledygook and turn it into something that makes sense. That need is not going away. The proliferation of increasing data means the ability to get to the point, to clarify, to say just what needs to be said. That's still a skill each of us have. That's still a relevant marketplace need. We just need to place it in the proper spots in our organizations. Get out there and get engaged and meet your teams, get cross-functionally aligned, and start showing your value as a clarifier, and you won't have anything to worry about.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. And for those of you that are out there, I believe that both of us will be in Sacramento for that conference, so we hope to see you there or at another one down the road like LavaCon, yes?
I'm going to be in Sacramento in May for that conference. I'm going to be at LavaCon in November for that conference. I look forward to meeting all of you, if I haven't already, at one of those.
We will see you there. Thanks, Tristan.
Okay. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.